Kashmir also feel in danger, constantly face threat from the Indian side. Very recently, you must have read in papers. A long strip around the ceasefire line has been shelled by displacing about 25,000 people. Before they've gone back to their houses now, but during the shelling period, they all had to run away from the smoke and leave their houses. They can resort to this any time undeclared war against us. And Azad Kashmir being a narrow strip all along is quite in the artillery range. So that is the kind of mental tension and danger which we are confronting. For that purpose, we are very seriously concerned as to what to do in case they start shelling other areas. To organize the people and mobilize them. It might appear to be some sort of a semi-military mobilization. Huge bulk of people. We don't want them to leave Azad Kashmir and go to Pakistan. Azad Kashmir already very thickly populated area. So all these things together call for a very serious attention by people concerned. The British should have been concerned both for their responsibility and for the constituents living in England. I think the concern starts from the constituents first, you see, and then the political situation. But I think politically it is also equally serious. Congress should have taken note of it. That is how things are at the moment.
Mr. Gray, would you explain the demonstration you said last night, which you are planning on 17th of November to the Prime Minister?
Planning is the wrong word, suggesting.
Suggesting, yes. I correct myself. Thank you.
There is the conference that I think you two were talking about. I think you find it's on the 17th.
17th of November?
Yes.
Yes.
In London.
London.
Yeah. And I'm one of the speakers at that conference. And I addressed the Kashmir Forum in Birmingham some weeks ago.
But the Kashmir Forum is planning this conference.
No,
this is a different Kashmir Forum, sir. The Gray is talking about the Kashmir Forum in Birmingham. The conference is being organized by the Kashmir International Forum.
Oh, I see.
Well, one of the things that I said in Birmingham, Your Excellency, was the difficulty with Kashmir, and especially it seems to me with the Kashmiris living in the UK, is that there is too much talk about Kashmir. It's easy to talk about Kashmir. You can keep gathering in innumerable numbers talking about Kashmir, but nothing ever happens about Kashmir. And there's 750,000 Kashmiris living in America. Yes. And my suggestion at the Kashmir Forum in Birmingham was, rather than talk about it, if every Kashmiri took one day out of 365, the same day, and 750,000 went down to London and just sat outside Parliament House, then nothing would work in London for one day, and it would hit every newspaper in the world. And it seems to me that's one of the things that you've got to consider. It's all right talking about Kashmir, but that's not what Kashmir needs. Kashmir needs publicity. It needs to be brought to the international stage, and people's conscience needs to be aroused where Kashmir is concerned. And you won't do that by sitting around talking about it. Now, I don't know whether they'll adopt it, but it seems to me
that there should be no difficulty in action that's sufficient
But mobilising support correctly is very important. If you just have splits and factions and divisions about how that's to be achieved, that will just send another message out, the wrong message.
That's right.
It's important that people have a very united position, Kashmiris and trade unionists and politicians, one very simple aim, and that's to put it on the agenda, the world agenda. And there is no room for divisions of fine argument. It's about saying this is an important issue for world peace. And that's not too grand a statement, because one incident in one country, as we've seen all too readily recently, can lead to many, many tensions in other countries not associated. And British trade unionists have nothing to gain by battles, military battles. We have nothing to we are emphasising. We were very grateful for the briefing, but we cannot comment on a military position as trade unionists. What we will do is emphasise the human rights violations. That will be our
And
objective.
need for the settling it politically.
That's right. From that.
Instead of resorting to militancy,
Yeah.
people should back.
First of all, you've got to make it. You've got to make people aware of the situation. It's a forgotten problem for many people. Even I would suspect for many Kashmiri Pakistanis
That's right.
in England.
Yeah.
Other people may want to forget the issue. Now we have to raise that debate with those other people in a constructive way, and we will be prepared to do that. But I think it's important that we, in a sense, direct the agenda by saying, look, here's a position in the world on human rights violations. Now we are able to do that, and we can, for instance, raise questions why people have been denied access to occupied Kashmir, why people can't see, what is there to hide from the Indian government. We have to ask all those questions. We don't make any judgment at this stage, but what we do say is that we've been given free and unfettered access here. And that's a very powerful statement to make to the British public.
Yeah.
I think another point, Prime Minister, is the question, you have 750,000 Kashmiris in England.
Yes.
Now let's look at another group which is smaller, the Orthodox Zionists. It's true they have a lot of money behind them, but self-help, the lobby, the very strong lobby that the Zionists can put up in defence of Israel has a very big effect in British political life and a very big effect in American political life. Now, what we need to do is to use the 750,000 Kashmiris who are numerically greater. They don't need the American dollars behind them, but just by their physical presence, by proper lobbying, getting onto the MPs and so on, the climate can be built up. And it's a question of using the resources you've got. And you've got the resources of moral righteousness on your side, and you have the resources of large numbers of people, but they've got to be mobilised. And it doesn't cost a lot of money to them, because they should be able to engender their own money for the demonstrations, but it's mobilisation and lobbying.
That's right.
That is what is lacking in the United Kingdom.
Yes.
For your information, Prime Minister, you were talking about the British responsibility for the Kashmir issue. You would be pleased to know, sir, that this year the Labour Party has adopted a policy on Kashmir for the first time in 44 years. And that has been unanimously approved by this year's Labour Party conference. So the next Labour government is now committed to raising the Kashmir issue in the United Nations directly. If the Labour Party wins the elections, it is now duty-bound by its own policy document to raise this issue internationally, and a lot of work has gone into it. Both Joe Kaufman and Roy Hattersley, after they visited Kashmir recently, have made some very strong statements and have committed themselves. So that is a very significant advance that we have made in the United Kingdom. And of course, following the visit that we made last time, I did meet up with you. We were at a gathering of some 300 Indian doctors with the Indian High Commissioner being present. Chancellor Grey got up and described the conditions in the Hamburg camp. And obviously it was very embarrassing for the Indian High Commissioner what Chancellor Grey had said. And this has actually raised the momentum in the UK. And friends like Chancellor Grey and Hattersley and Colton and others, and our two union comrades who have come with us now, and then they go back and they also tell the story of what they've seen here. I'm sure we will be mobilizing the 750,000 Kashmiris that you talk about, Phil. Unity is lacking at the moment in our community, and I'm sure
Mobilization.
your position will
Mobilization.
get the
Mobilization is very likely for this which is lacking.
One suggestion.
Yes, please.
One suggestion we had in our discussions last night, Prime Minister, is for the Kashmiri people here to communicate with the Kashmiri people in Britain to point out that this is still, we know some do it privately, but if there was a campaign, a sustained campaign of letter writing to build the awareness, knowledge is the first thing. If we can build the awareness, simple things like sending a greetings card with Remember Kashmir, so that the people in Birmingham,
talking about this apparently change in the an approach by the Labour. It's purely political, hypothetical. It may not lead to, I don't know what is exactly happening about it, with regard to the attitude of the Tories in this space. In democratic countries, I have seen that one side takes to one side, and others, just for the sake of changing sides, change over to the other. The Conservatives have been, they are said to have been closer to Pakistan compared to Labour, certainly not closer to India. And now when Labour will start talking about the Kashmir issue closer, how will they react? Is there any implication of that?
Well, I think the Conservatives in the next few months will be rather occupied on one issue, and that is trying to get re-elected. I doubt whether they will expand any policies. I think their problem at the moment is justifying the last 12 years. We are very hopeful of a new government in spring. We believe it will be a Labour government. So I don't duck the question, but I really think the Conservatives are not really interested in taking on new issues that they see as new issues. I think they may be opportunist in certain directions, but the economy and our health service will be dominant issues leading up to a general election. I don't think they'll expand on international items.
I think on the other hand, Prime Minister, I've been an individual member of the Labour Party and sectarian, and it was a Labour government, of course, who allowed competition to take place.
Yes.
You mustn't forget that. I mean, changing things. But there will be individual Conservative MPs. Being a trade unionist, we use what contacts we have. If we can get individual Conservative MPs to join in the campaign, that A, embarrasses the Conservatives, and it shows us a broader front. The Liberal Democrats shouldn't be left out, because you can appeal to them, and they possibly will get 12% of the vote, and they've got a handful of MPs. They act as a gadfly on both sides, and therefore I think we shouldn't sort of wipe off the Conservatives as a whole. I'm anti-Conservative, but the individual Conservatives will probably, as they do on other issues, would probably be mobilised. So if there's a meeting somewhere and there's a local Conservative MP who's sympathetic, well, he should be invited on the platform. Shouldn't just discard.
People who I had the opportunity to meet during these recent weeks, they indirectly expressed opinion which reflected some sort of a sense of complacency or unconcern by the Conservatives over this. That's why I asked this question. Does this have anything to do with the change of your policy, the Labour policy, or is it because of their being preoccupied with election?
No, to be honest, I'm surprised that you get the impression that the Labour Party was more in favour of India than Pakistan, because historically...
But that has been the impression all along, except for the last few years of Abdul and Mr. Baldwin. That has been the impression.
I can't understand the position.
No, I think historically, Your Excellency, if you go back to the 1964-65 war, Harold Wilson's Labour government ultimately sided with Pakistan on that issue.
Yeah, but that has been
maybe
that's a false picture. That was the impression all along. But I'm glad that those who discussed it.
We have Sir John Beadle, who's a very comfortable issue.
Yes, I would like to
have a number of individual Conservative members of Parliament. Member of Parliament we are interested in this. And on the Liberal Democrat side, Lord Avery is very committed to it. He chairs the, he's also the chairman of the Council. So we have all we have support from all the three parties, but the Labour Party is the only party which has actually now got it as a manifesto and will be fighting the election on that policy. And if it wins, so then it will be a mandate given by the British people to the Labour government. to raise the issue in the United Nations and support the stance that Pakistan should take on these issues.
I think from this, it's also a position that Labour has got its policies correctly established, but it's still in opposition. I think the real test is when somebody's in power, and we genuinely believe there will be a change in government. That's what we stopped. I think after 12 years, a number of people are ready for a change of direction of British politics. I think once they're in power, things that are set as policies can then be implemented. I think that's quite important.
Most of our people in Zambia and UK, they are long way for Labour.
That's right.
That's where the pressure comes on the Labour Party. But even so, we are not mobilized to an extent that we can exert maximum pressure on the opinion on this issue. We have the resources in the UK. All we need is to bring them all together.
She's staying today. I'm going back. डॉक्टर
ये रात को मिला है सर।
अच्छा
मिला है आपके पास में फोन करता हूँ सर। वो रिफ्यूजी कैंप भी यही सर CMS में लोग फायरिंग में 2 स्टेप्स को दिखता है सर। रात को मैं मिलने गया था ये भी मकसूद जलसा भी मिला 1 घंटा बाद मिला आज वो 9:30 बजे इधर आ रही हूँ मैं आ रहा हूँ वहाँ किताबें भी देनी है तो कहती है मेरे सारा कहती है हम चले कश्मीरी बोलते हैं
knowledgeable lady about affairs in India and Pakistan. She's a sweet lady.
Mrs. Kale. She's a research scholar from Sweden and writes for one of the 2 major papers. Bulgar. Yes, yeah.
She's been a regular visitor to that part of Kashmir, and then she stayed with her husband here in Karachi for 5 years. She's quite conversant with situations. She also writes about Islam. She has been finding out things about Islam.
Sweden has a good reputation for raising human rights issues in the United Nations, and possibly the Dutch as well, and the Danes. But some of the other powers, of course, have their own games to play. They only raise human rights when it suits them to, not as a matter of principle.
Yeah, that's right. That's our process. Had stayed with us for longer. Some unexpected visits here.
Yes.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Prime Minister. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sir, he's from Mirpur.
Yes, I know. I knew him before.
He's a local.
Yes. There he is. There he was.
University.
Next.